What happens is Will gets a little bit defensive and says that every other day Brittany is asking him if it's going to be a yes on decision day. And he subsequently afterwards acknowledges that she must be feeling a lack of validation from him and security because he isn't reassuring her. And this just reminded me that people know what they're doing. It's like it reminded me of it just reminded me of when like you find out that someone said something intentionally to be rude and you gave them the benefit of the doubt and then you're like, "Oh, you meant that shit. You meant that shit. You meant to make me feel exactly
Yeah.
as I did." A friend hasn't texted you back and you thought they were busy but you've been feeling a little neglected or you've been feeling like I hope they're okay and then all of a sudden they reach out and they're like, "I've been ignoring you." And it's like, "Oh, so you've been meaning to make me feel this way." Because here's the thing. You can't have as big of a brain as Will claims to have and has shown that he has and not know that you're making her feel that way.
What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored, your favorite reality TV and interview podcast. It's your host, Leah.
Today, we are going to be diving right into Married at First Sight, Season 19, Episode 9. If you guys missed my guest feature, I was on Altar Call, a Married at First Sight podcast, I believe last week, so that I could recap episode 7. So if you did not go over to Altar Call, listen to that, listen to my episode with Tayne, and then fortunately for you guys, if you missed it, I have Tayne on my podcast today. We are appearing on each other's podcast. And like I said, we'll be talking about episode 9. So buckle up and welcome to the show.
Hi, podcasters supporting podcasters. Hi.
Yes, podcaster, us. Supporting each other. I'm so honored that you asked me on that. I've seen your podcast pop up like when I've explored Married at First Sight on Spotify, but I hadn't listened. So when you messaged me, that prompted me to go out and listen. I loved it. Now I'm a subscriber. I was honored when you asked me to appear on your podcast as hot take of an episode as we did together. And I'm really excited that you like returned the favor and you came back on my podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to everyone.
Of course. I mean, it was fun having you there. And then it's always fun to like hear different takes. I say this all the time. We're not always going to agree. We don't have to agree because everyone has different perspectives. But yeah, you had a hot take and the people took the take
People let me
hotly.
know. The people let me know. And that's the thing too. I reserve the right to have a hot take. This is positively uncensored. I also reserve the right to change my mind. I'll let you know if I change my mind on my takes, as you all should reserve the right to change your mind. Just because you decide that Meghan's an annoying bitch one week, as I do, maybe in one argument you see her point. As I've decided that Will is purposefully being cold, maybe one episode I'll throw him a bone and send him a compliment, right? We can all shift our opinions and acknowledge things as they come up. But with that being said, I'm excited to dive into episode 9, which started with a gift basket from Dr. Pia. All of the couples received a gift basket, and inside of that gift basket was sex toys. And from my understanding of the prompt, they were supposed to go through the basket together and either have a conversation about what they were open to using together or talk about their prior experience with said toys. Each couple sort of navigated this differently, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly what they were supposed to do with it. Did you feel that way, first of all? Like the instructions were a bit unclear?
Yes, I do feel like this is one of the casualties of new MAFS on Peacock because we've talked about it like how they're just fast forwarding a whole bunch of things because we saw the gifts, we saw their reactions, and we never heard of them again. So we have
Mhm.
no idea how that happened, which is it's also a blessing. We've had in the past where we've seen people in ball gags that we never want to see again, and we've had people that look so uncomfortable when they ask them to do stuff. So maybe this was the right approach. We see their reactions and then that was it. But I don't know what Dr. Pia was hoping for, especially in a season where they're all having sex. In the past, they were not. So it's awkward.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't know if we missed anything or if it was a blessing.
You're right, because now I'm imagining seeing that in prior seasons and having to watch them use the toys on each other and imagining the camera crew like lurking in the corner over them. And I am really glad that we didn't have to see that. But yeah, it just lacked context. So it just sort of lacked context. They got this game, and we first check in with Belinda and Chad, and they open up the box. And Belinda's perspective is that she doesn't really have much interest in the toys, um, because she feels like she's already done that. It's already been there, done that. She's already had that experience or that phase of her life, and she's kind of over it. Chad, on the other hand, is still open to spicing things up, and a little bit beyond that, thinks that it's important to make sure that their marriage is fun, and that even though they're mature, they don't have to miss out on having fun sex. Any thoughts on their reaction?
Yeah, I want to preface this. I think I have said this before. Vanilla sex matters. Like, listen, if that's your thing, I wish you could have just said, been there, done that, and I didn't like it. But to
Mhm.
say, been there, done that, and that phase of my life is over, like, basically implying, like, she's too old to have fun.
Mhm.
1000% disagree. So I'm with Chad on that. So that was the only interesting part about Belinda's take on it.
That's a really good note, because did you put it down because you disliked it, or did you put it down because you don't feel sexy enough or confident enough to use the toys? That would be a conversation for them to explore, because absolutely agree. Age doesn't mean that you can't spice up your relationship. You can be 65, 75, 80 and get on a sex swing if you want. And I think that's great. Now, Will and Brittany, they go through their basket, and I think that their approach is Will is pulling out things that he's either comfortable using and has declared that he has used in the past. It looked like he pulled out a scarf of some sort, which I'm assuming was to cover his partner's eyes. What looked like maybe some lubricant, maybe some handcuffs. So basically, all in all, Will's a freak. Okay, Will's a freak, and he's open to it. If I was Brittany, I would have had the similar. Oh, this is what you used? And then we would have moved on. No judgment, but oh, okay, great.
She asked him, pick out all the things that you've used
Okay.
before, and also the scarf. Yes, it could be for the eyes, it could also be for the hands or the legs. There are other things you could use it for. But she seems pleased because she was like, I think
Mhm.
in the first episode, she was like, she wanted a partner who was more experienced, so who could show her things. And if she's feeling there's not a closeness, this could be an area maybe that could have brought them closeness, but again, they didn't explore it, so we don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
well, subsequently, maybe it didn't, but it could be an area that they could have used to get closer, I think.
I feel like Britney's receiving a lot of criticism, so it's just good to point out that her comfortability and even allowing him to talk about his past without jealousy or without judgment, and that being something that excites her and that she was looking for in a partner. I think that that says that Britney's a little bit more secure in herself than people perceive her to be. And I think a lot of Britney's insecurity is really brought on by Will's reaction to things that she says. Can be I think all of us can characterize ourselves one way. And then if we're in a relationship with someone or a friendship with somebody that isn't reciprocating, or just their way of communicating is so different than what we've experienced, that maybe something that we've never had is starting to come up. Like all of a sudden, I'm feeling insecure when I'm not an insecure person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I was talking to a friend about Britney over the weekend, and I was like, listen, I give Britney shit sometimes, but I am Britney. Britney is me. Like, I would fill in the blanks. I would write that story. I will publish it, edit it, because Will is not giving her what she needs and is not giving her that comfort. So it's a combination of both things. Like, she might be insecure. She has said she is insecure based on her past relationships and never making it past the 3-month mark. So I do think it's a combination of both. Um, I give her props, but I tend to think that Britney has a traditional way of thinking about marriage, and sometimes that usually comes with not, I don't want to say submit because that's really harsh, but just like the men is the leader, and so she's okay being led. And because I can't remember the very first episode, I don't know what she said, so maybe that falls under that bracket, like, hey, he's the man, it's okay, he can just transfer whatever he's learned and he can teach me, and I'm okay with that. So who
And
knows.
I think that's fair to want that. Like, I think it's fair to never have had a companion in your life or to had to advocate for everything on your own and then want a partner to come in your life and take off some of that weight in your shoulders. I
Yeah.
immediately think of Alandria and Nick and how she's talked about she doesn't even have to like unscrew a water bottle and how he's sort of like anticipating her needs and
Yeah.
how nice that feels to not have that weight. So I wonder too if some of Brittany is just trying to see what married life would be like. What is Will going to pick up in this marriage and what things is Brittany still ultimately going to be responsible for? But we'll get to Brittany more because Brittany has her moment on the tennis court, right? We'll get to that. Um, Okay, I don't remember that we see Meghan and Derek. So the next thing I have in my notes is that Meghan takes Derek with her to do a cold plunge. And during this cold plunge, we saw a flashback of a moment that I really wish that we got to see the full extent of. And that was Meghan hanging out with Derek's friend Scott, who I besmirched in the last episode. As I said, F you, Scott, who do you think you are? We saw that he was able to have a great conversation with Meghan. In fact, Meghan was feeling so comfortable that despite a lot of people saying that Meghan is cold and incapable of vulnerability, she told Scott's friend, I said I love you first. And actually, Derek hasn't said it back yet, which is something that she omitted from telling the group in a public space. So she was able to feel vulnerable enough to say that to his friend. His friend replies and says, I'm shocked that Derek hasn't said it back first personally, just knowing Derek. And I thought that that was a good testament to despite what we've seen of Meghan, I have a lot of criticisms of her, but she's clearly able to move past something to have Scott in her house, to stand there in the kitchen with them, to that for them to have a conversation. And also part of what Scott said last week could have been chalked up to the edit. You know what I mean? And what was cut from the conversation for him to seem so out of his stomp like we're out like I don't know where he got off doing that. I don't know what adjective to use, but there is one, right?
Well, let me counter that. So I don't see Scott as the villain like you do in the story. I just think that he was talking to his friend. His friend laid out, "Oh, I want kids," and he was just responding to that. Sometimes people talk to their friends and they have that. So I didn't think it was that terrible. Part of the problem with Meghan is like, yes, she's able to be vulnerable, but she's like 0 to 100. We don't know what we're gonna get at any given time. So him bringing it up, I mean,
Absolutely.
where Derek made a mistake was saying, well, Scott said that's what you thought. Say it with your chest and don't bring Scott into it. So I can see her reacting to that because Meghan is also reactive. So she's reacting to whatever at the moment. She's hurt. She's upset. I think we can deduce that she doesn't like talking about her stuff publicly. So I think what she's just reacting to is now you've gone to tell somebody else her business and they're
Mhm.
dictating what you feel. So maybe when she's come down, because we're seeing that they move past things quickly this season.
Mhm.
And so she's able to receive Scott because, again, I don't know that he necessarily did anything so terrible. That was all on Derek. You're my
And you know
husband.
what?
Yeah.
That's Scott, this is the thing so that I can make this really clear for everybody. Scott and Derek having a conversation isn't a problem
Yeah.
if that conversation was in private. I get it. They're on reality TV. Regardless, that conversation is then put out to the world for them to add to the narrative that Meghan doesn't really give, that she wants kids, that, that conversation could be had between two friends, and that's a fine for your friend to remind you of what desires you wanted heading into the relationship. However, to do that on camera, that was my issue. And that's I think that that's very valid. Like I think it's very valid for the issue to be the fact that it's so public because while I thought that Meghan in our last episode could have leaned on the girls for more support. I appreciate the fact that as reactive as a person she is, she's not doing things for the entire group to weigh in on. And she does try to keep it privately between her and Derek. Like, I can appreciate that once you throw it out to the group, you get everybody else's opinion, including us viewers. So I can understand her desire to hash things out privately and have big conversations privately first, I guess.
Yeah. I think I think that was my stance when that happened. I was like, you know what? She's not in the frame of mind. But then it happened again when she didn't share the I love you. And I'm like, okay, now it's becoming a pattern. But it also goes back to something I've been trying to struggle with is Megan concerned about how she comes off on TV. So it could be a thing of, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to put it out there. So I don't want any narrative created. So then it's created about me. And like you said, I don't have control over that. But if I say nothing, you can't create anything with that. Is it kind of a selfish motivation? It just sounds so horrible, but I don't mean it so as horrible as it sounds. But
Right.
for her own personal, like, hey, I don't want to put this out there. I'll just do this privately. But going back to what you said about Scott and Derek, and that's why, yes, it should have been had privately, and that's why it's on my blame is on Derek for that. You shouldn't have even brought up that conversation, if you, especially knowing how Megan is, so.
I think something that's interesting about reality TV is that what Megan's asking for, and we see this across so many shows, is something that's actually protective to the relationship. And any normal couple who's not on TV would say that it's best to not fight in front of their friends, to
Mm-hmm.
not fight in front of their family, to solve things privately so that nobody else can weigh in on things. And also, yeah, preserve the integrity of your marriage so that it's not, you're just not making a scene and making other people uncomfortable in public. So in like a normal setting, Megan not sharing would be completely rational for somebody in a relationship to just be like, no, like I don't share the dirty laundry of my marriage publicly. If I need someone to talk to, I'll go to a therapist or I'll talk to my friend in private, but I don't need to share it. But also, Megan could be very calculated and be worried about her image on TV. I think it's hard to tell because a lot of what would be protective to a relationship and normal in real life can easily be misinterpreted or just come across a different way, like
Yeah,
on TV. Even Brittany and Will in their tennis court episode, Brittany's wrong for the time and place. But if nobody can think of a time where they were that person and they brought something up at the wrong time in the
yeah,
wrong place, like everybody can relate to somebody to some extent, but we don't really want to. You know what I mean? Like none of
yeah,
us really want to be like, oh yeah, that would kind of set me off, but I wouldn't want it to set me off on camera. Like,
yeah, yeah. Can I just clarify that? I don't think she's calculated. I think when I say worrying about her image, it's more like think of a pageant girl where you're just like you have to be perfect all the time. You cannot show any flaw, you cannot show weakness. I think that's
yes.
what I mean. And then when you think of her background and how she is in business, it's just like this is what I want, how I want to look. And I don't want this. We've already been fighting so much. I don't want to add something else to it. And the counter to that is like, what if all five of them wanted to keep things private? It would be boring. So
and
that's
that's
my only
and that's
thing.
the
Yeah.
reality, like
Hmm.
that's the unfortunate thing is that's why reality TV is so toxic, because I understand that what's meant to protect people's lives is not conducive with sharing the most personal moments
Yeah.
on television. The two can't exist, like, you know what I mean, like we are just viewers
Yeah.
to a process that's not fair for anybody involved. But I will say, we see this on Love is Blind all the time, and we've seen this on prior seasons of Married at First Sight. A piece of it, when I say calculated, could just be not wanting to take public accountability or not wanting to be criticized. You know what I mean? Like not wanting anybody else to chime in and be like, yeah, you know what? Actually, Derek is right. You're being crazy. Or just, like you said, that very pageant like Nia and Danny from the Valley would be a good parallel
Yeah.
because as quiet as it's kept, I understand why Nia wants to keep her and Danny's business private, and I respect it. But I hate it for reality TV because I want to be in there. I want to be in there.
It's
Um,
funny. That's actually why I don't like actors being cast on Beverly Hills Housewives
mhm,
because you have something to lose. You still have
absolutely.
auditions, you have things you still want to book, so you
Mhm.
care about how it is, so it seems like a little curated. So, just as an aside.
I absolutely, and I don't like the curated, although I understand it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like
Hmm.
it's both. I understand it, but I don't like it. So Jalen and Josh have a visit. The next thing in my notes is Jalen and Josh have a visit from Dr. Pia and Pastor Cal. And We'll talk about this a little more, but I'm so curious as to number one, where Dr. Peppers is, and number two, how they decide which experts are brought in for which conversations. I don't know if Pastor Cal is like the big gun who's brought in to like address something, you know what I mean? And if he's like brought in for the couples who have like the most tumultuous situations to get over, and if Dr. Pia is more so like, well, you could work on your intimacy. I don't quite understand that, but the two of them go in together. And initially, they're talking about the fact that Jalen is just worried about trusting Josh because, come to find out, although he said he would delete his ex on social media and cease contact with her, he's still following her. Jalen's issue is the fact that she didn't ask Josh to do this. Josh volunteered to unfollow the ex and then didn't and lied about it. And so she just really felt like Josh, it's not Jalen wasn't worried about infidelity and trust there. She was worried if Josh appeases her in moments for him to not really agree and then either do things that would be against what he said or challenge things later on. And her issues, her worry, anxieties come to fruition about 15 minutes later because that's exactly what Josh does right after the experts leave.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to say something I like about this cast is like they state what their issue is and they back it up with examples. And she absolutely came up with the best example with the whole festival Burning Man thing. I mean, to our chagrin, because we had to hear it for a long time, but it was the best example. Like you said, it was fine. And then now here we are. You're not fine with it. So, yeah.
And thank you, because that's the perfect transition into the conversation of, for example, Burning Man. I told you earlier, we see the flashback of Jalen, sure enough, telling him that, would you be okay if I don't want to do this? One thing I will say is one critique I've had of Jalen the entire time is appeasing Josh too much. Josh would have known my backbone and my boundaries by now, and he would have known not to infringe upon them to the degree that he is. It's one thing to have a great time on our honeymoon, step outside of my comfort zone, do some excursions. But if I'm hearing Burning Man to the point of nauseum, I'm going to tell you flat out, I'm not going. And I wish Jalen had said that before the point, although I guess I sort of get the experts having to coax that out of her because she was worried about Josh's response because he wasn't really being genuine, and she could probably feel that as he's sort of placating her and assuring her that it wouldn't be an issue, if she doesn't want to go to Burning Man, but he would be really happy if it's something that they could enjoy together. Ultimately, she says, no, I don't really like to camp. I don't really like to go to festivals. So going out in the desert with a porta potty for 7 days isn't what I want to do. And Josh seemingly says that, that's okay. I'm not with you because of your passions, and I don't think that that's all of your being, and I am not just Burning Man. I have more to me than my passions.
Debatable.
Because Dr. Pia compliments this,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me wonder, Dr. Pia, where is your detector? Where is your bullshit meter? Because I knew he was lying. She compliments him for being so mature and for being able to really share that he's not that, and that him and Jalen can find other things. And they leave. Right. And Jalen even looks a little unsure as Josh is saying this, if I'm honest. She
Yeah.
doesn't look like she really receives this. And his patch is to say that he likes the togetherness and the community aspect, and maybe he can find ways for him and Jalen to do that together. Once the experts leave, their conversation goes absolutely left because he has changed his tune, and he is now trying to convince Jalen that on her deathbed, she would not have any regrets about the one time that she went to Burning Man with Josh. What do you have? Any thoughts?
This was just crazy to me because I just thought it was a cut and dry thing where it's like, listen, if this means so much to you, you can go. I don't have to go. And then he would be like, hey, I would love to go with you, but it's not your thing. You know what? I can go on my own. But that did not seem to be an option.
Hmm.
I don't know that I really heard Jalen say, hey, you can't go, but also
Hmm.
Jalen saying, well, if I can't go with you, maybe you should find another wife who's going to go with you. How the heck did we get there? Like, it was just a very confusing thing. And then Dr. Pia saying, oh, when you're married now, you can't go to the extremes. You have to figure out how to solve the problem. Everything was just, huh? The entire time I was watching that. So, I don't know that it came to the resolution, but my hot take was like, I feel like this conversation gave Jalen the ick, and I don't know if they can come back from that.
Jalen had the ick for a while from the moment that he tried to carry her in the pool, the yacht.
Really?
I think
You think
so. I
so?
think I think
Oh,
so. I
okay.
think Jalen's been clocking him slowly because it's like he won't ever take no for an answer. And I think that she's been kind of keeping tabs of how many situations that
Mm-hmm.
pops up for. And I think that what she's been waiting for is a moment for Josh to show up for her. And we saw his refusal to even read what he had on the paper for, as far as their vows and rewriting them on their anniversary. And I think that after bending over backwards and stepping out of her comfort zone for him so many times, at that moment, that was where she started to see what this relationship was truly like, how he is, how he can sort of be beyond stubborn, unmoving, and very emotional when he doesn't want to do something. And we see that with Burning Man. I've never seen somebody cry over Burning Man.
The
And
moment.
it was a moment. And Jalen says as much because you said something like you didn't hear it being an option for Jalen to not go. And she says that. She vocalizes to him, I feel like I'm being backed into a corner. Josh's response to that is to cry about how community is important to him and because of the absence of his mom, um, which I didn't understand the relation or the correlation there, but because of the absence of his mom, um, Burning Man has, you know, made him find community that he was looking for because hanging out with his friends just doesn't do it. And he tried to make a comparison about Jalen's spin class, which just isn't the same. I could sense Jalen's frustration in saying a 45-minute spin class does not compare to 7 days. And his refusal to just drop it, I found infuriating. And before we move away from them and I give you the chance to say your last thoughts, I think that what we realize here is that men a lot of times do not have community amongst their friends. And I think that I've known this and I've talked about this, but I think that this situation, it took me a while to understand what's going on with Josh. And once I heard him say, hanging out with my friends isn't community. That's just hanging out with Bill, hanging out with Riley. That's just hanging out with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Going here is community. And I realized that men form friendships around hobbies. They form friendships around mutual interests. They form friendships because of proximity, because they work at the same place. And seldom do they ever sit there and have a conversation to check in on what's happening in their own lives, how they are emotionally. And that lack of space for men to support their friends makes them feel isolated. And a lot of men don't even feel a sense of community until they're in a relationship. And women, and whoever they're dating, their partner ends up sort of being their outlet for all of their emotional problems. And they realize that they need therapy and also just don't have that with their friends. So basically for Josh, I think that he is the illustration of that. I think he doesn't feel community because men keep things very surface level. I think that he thinks he has to go out and be amongst people or do drugs to feel community. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's tripping. Maybe when he does Molly, he feels super alive. He feels stuff that he doesn't normally feel during his work week and this togetherness. But I don't think that he knows how to have that interpersonally, because even him saying to Jalen, fine, let's just go figure out, let's just start a club together. Like his definition of community is still something that's centered around a hobby. And I don't think that he or a lot of men know what community is. Like I think that Josh is a lot of men. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking of the what they call it, the male loneliness epidemic
I
and
wrote that in
stuff.
my notes.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. But I think the question I had was, I agree that that's the case. Like he doesn't see that, like not hanging out with your friends and not seeing it as community, first of all, wild. But what do you do at Burning Man? I don't know. I don't know what happens there that makes you feel like community. If hanging out with your friends is not community, what are you doing there where you are dancing and I don't know, like you said, maybe it's the tripping. I don't know. But that
Mm-hmm.
was what my question was. And I wish Jalen would have asked him is like, so what is it that you get at Burning Man that you don't get in your everyday life? And I think she brought up a good point where we probably shouldn't have your whole community depend on 7 days of a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy,
Mm-hmm.
for you to do. And I think the other point I have is like, we may not see this because Brittany's a woman and Josh is a guy, but they're two sides of the same coin. Expectations. They have expectations of their partner. This is how it should look. We may not, need to adjust like, okay, this is the reality of what's happening now. Josh is a rom-com guy. In his mind, my wife is going to be my everything, going to be my partner. We're going to do this together. And then they gave you a wife who's like, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. And instead of Josh to find a solution, like, okay, what is the solution? How can we redefine this? He's like, nope. This is how I've envisioned that it's going to be. And then that's the only way that it should be, instead of like just maybe tweaking things a little bit. Now, Britney's is a little different because, I mean, we're going to get there, but like Will is not giving her anything, but you've been giving a man who is not what you envisioned in your head. And most of the times, like, I mean, no partner of yours is going to be 100%, right? It's like seeing like if the pros outweigh the cons and then work with it. So I think that's what Josh's problem is like he's putting too much weight on Burning Man, but you've gone to Burning Man without Jalen this last few years. I don't understand what is happening here. So make a tweak, be flexible, because if you are going to be married for a long time, you're gonna have to learn how to be flexible.
I like hearing your perspective because I'm sure that some people are going to agree with you, and that's not a perspective that I would have been able to offer them. So I always like to hear like another way to look at things, because I think that, and I think I had this in my notes, so it's so funny that you made a comparison with Josh and then a woman, because I think Josh and Rhonda are the same side. And I think that they are actually in the same situation where both Jalen and Pat are um like they are taking what they're taking interest in their partner's interests. They're stepping outside of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
They are showing up and doing the things that a partner should do, and yet it that annoying noise of Rhonda complaining or Josh like planning another excursion because the last 7 haven't been good enough, or Jalen has shown you that she's willing to step out of her comfort zone. So I see a lot of similarity. And when they don't get their way, there is this like emotional tantrum or almost like misplaced emotional reaction. So that's so interesting, because I think that Josh and Rhonda, had you guys not been 30 years apart, you guys might be more similar than you ever thought. Um, but I think it's interesting. So as everybody is listening, like put in the comments, like, do you see any similarities? What are you seeing? Is there anybody else that we should loop in there? I thought about maybe Meghan, but I'm not at the point where I can loop Meghan with Rhonda yet. Yet.
Honestly, they're all interchangeable except Belinda and Chad. They're in their own bubble, in their own world. We're still going back and forth. Like, I was so sure that Belinda's, because when you came on, I was like, is she really into him? I'm not sure. Now I think she is when she was going on with the name change thing and all that. But then after later on, I was like, huh, I'm back to being unsure
I'm unsure now.
again.
I'm unsure now. Now I'm back to what I said, right? Where I like remember I was like, I don't think she's attracted to him. I think she's kind
Yeah.
of get the ick at a couple things that he does.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, maybe she's just reluctant to lean in as quickly as he does. There's something. There's something there for Belinda that's making her unsure. I think that you're right on there. So moving away from Josh and Jalen and their festival conversation. Mind you, Burning Man is bad for the environment. It's expensive. People just go there and do drugs. It's dirty. They had a porter potty incident. You can't take a shower. Josh, you know, set up a tent in your backyard and invite some friends over and blow some dust around with a fan, and you can pretty much achieve the same thing with a large speaker. You'll be fine. I think it's so strange because I know that there are people who like save up all year and they go to Burning Man, but when I think of Burning Man, I think of celebrities. Like I think of celebrities going, and it's just like odd to me that we know he makes a lot of money and also that his way of seeing community is this like lavish event sort of,
Yeah.
which is marketed as not lavish and down to earth
But
despite the cost.
yeah.
Okay, so we check in with Rhonda and Pat. And as always, Rhonda takes it upon herself to be exhausting. Rhonda is exhausting. And this particular episode, they are en route to Rhonda's father's grave so that she can see him and leave some flowers. And on the way, Rhonda is in a nauseating story about the end of her father's life, her uncle's life. Then we transition to his Playboy collection. And after about an hour, Pat does try to relate to Rhonda and say that his dad also had a Playboy collection in the trunk in the house. Rhonda says, you did it again. This is about my father. This is about the end of his life. I'm sharing something deeply personal. And I just don't understand how much space Rhonda wants to take up in the relationship. She takes up so much space. Okay. And this is where I talked about how I can see Pat people pleasing because we do see him pull over and we do see him say. However, Rhonda needs someone to be more firm and say, after an hour of letting you have the floor, this is the first time I've said something. Oh, how long do you want me to let you talk? And should I ever respond? What's appropriate to say back? And like Rhonda thinks that she's the most interesting person in the world. Okay. And really, Pat's knowledge of rockets in the 5 minutes that we watched him teach her one episode was more interesting. So, anyways, Rhonda ended up annoyed that Pat minimized her story about her father or uncle's Playboys by saying that it was pretty normal back then, and then goes into another story. Okay, so she's annoyed. She's looking out the window, body language away from Pat. Mind you, he's driving. He doesn't know where he's going. He's been paying attention to Rhonda. He doesn't have on any tunes. He's not listening to the radio. He's listening to Rhonda on the way to her father's gravesite in an area that he doesn't know. They
Mhm.
get to the gravesite and he goes with Rhonda to the grave. She reminds him to not step on any of the graves as if he is a child. And then they get to her father's grave or headstone. And Rhonda wants Pat to make a formal introduction, if not speech, to her father. Since Pat hasn't met her father and all he knows about him is that he had a collection of Playboys, he says, "It's nice to meet you." And Rhonda whips
Visibly.
her head around,
Hmm.
passes Pat the plastic bag, and sends him back to the car so that she can have a moment. What did you think of the car ride there and just even the start of the visit at the grave?
Rhonda strikes again. I was like, can this man do anything right? And I said it on my recap where I was like, again, he was driving the treacherous highways of Texas. I lived in Texas. It is crazy driving there. He's concentrating, listening to her stories. But I will say this. Rhonda has come out to say, like, the producers were pressing her to keep talking about her childhood. I'm just saying that's what she said, but it's
And setting her up.
if I were Pat, I would just keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't say anything. But much like KB and Edmund, I think most people knew. But the minute I knew that they weren't gonna work was when she kept talking to him like a child. Two things cannot exist. You cannot talk to someone like a child and still want to have sex with them and be their romantic partner. So you can't say, don't step on the graves, don't do this, put this in there. She said, I think it was the flowers and stuff. Walk this way, give me a minute. You can't talk to someone you're romantically involved with and expect that to be sustainable. So that was uncomfortable to watch. And again, something they all suffer from, except Belinda and Chad, I guess. There's too much expectations on these people. 5 weeks ago, I didn't know who you were. I had no idea who you were. Even people we have in our lives for like 20 years, we're still navigating how to, communicate with them, interact with them. People we love so dearly because we're evolving, we're changing. How in 5 weeks are we going to know what to say, what to do? And then she keeps asking him to give grace. You don't give him grace. So I need an iPad moment. I need the experts to show up, play it, watch yourself, and be like, oh. So that's what I think.
Absolutely agree. Can Pat do anything right? He is going above and beyond with tolerating Rhonda, and somehow it's still not enough for her. And she refuses to sit with any criticisms, and yet she's on a constant loop of things that Pat does that she can correct. And I think that her being single for as long as she has and having the relationship of mother to children where she's correcting her children, I think we are seeing a lot of that and that rustiness showing up with Pat. Does that mean that if you're rusty, you can't be in a healthy relationship? No. But Rhonda needs therapy. So at this point, they decide to leave the gravesite. Like Rhonda's had enough time at the car. She's talking to her father. I don't remember what Rhonda said. I don't remember what she's saying to her dad. Do you? Do you think it was anything of note?
No, she was just like, well, I got married again. And then after she practically shoos him away, she was just like, it's so fucking hard. And then that was it.
When she swears, it makes me so uneasy for some reason. Like she's so angry. Like she only swears when she's angry, whereas Chad is like, well, that's fucking cool, and then like says it in her language. So for
Yeah.
it to come out just when she's angry, it's like startling. So they get back in the car and they're headed home now from the gravesite. And Rhonda's obviously still upset. However, she's going to do Pat a favor and start another family tale. This one he's listening to while he's trying to eat a pepperoni roll. And Rhonda talks about how her father passed away 44 years ago when he was 19. And at some point in this conversation, Pat misses the number. God forbid he paused to ask Rhonda a question and show that he's engaged in listening and says, how old were you? I just told you. I was 19 years old. I'm revealing something deeply personal about my father right now, and I just feel like you're not listening to me. So at this point, Pat pulls over, and Rhonda's like, shit. Okay. And she's like quiet for a second. She's like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not I'm not doing well. Okay. And let's see. Oh, yeah. He's not doing well. He tells Rhonda that she just seems to be picking at him. He's trying to support her, but he can't hear everything. And at this point, he can't help but feel like Rhonda is testing him. Rhonda doesn't deny that she's testing him, ends up apologizing, but only for a second because she believes that she should get grace from Pat for being overly critical because a wall went up for her when she felt like Pat was uninterested in what she was saying. Pat stays firm on his end of the conversation, and eventually they are able to exit the parking lot. Rhonda delusionally says, I'm so glad you shared that with me. And I'm sure she delved into another 2-hour family tale or however long it took them to get home. She's exhausting.
Jeez. I like when Brittany complains that, oh, I'm not sure if Will is not into me, she's valid because of how Will is. When Rhonda says she's not sure if Pat is interested in her, I'm confused. What more do you need? Because
She
this is
can't
go
keep
ahead, go
going.
ahead.
Sorry. No, you.
No, this is a man that is so agreeable. This is a man who's just trying his best and trying to just be present. But you can see him so tense. Even in the car, when she gets emotional, he's just like, oh God, what do I say? Is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? And now I'm not going to be a hypocrite and not be like, there have been times where I'll probably be like, I just said it. Why aren't you just listening? But it's because he's so tense. He's trying to drive. He's trying to be there. He's trying to say the right thing, and he missed that part. So I can see how it's emotional for her, but again, you just met. He's just realizing the depth of your emotion and the loss of your dad, and it's a huge monumental thing for you, but he's playing catch up. I don't know.
And she is trying so hard to convince Pat that Pat is taking up too much space in the
Please.
relationship or not listening enough, and that's just not reality. It's just
Yeah.
it's not reality. So I don't think that Rhonda is rooted in actual reality.
Yeah.
Will and Brittany have a meeting with the experts. And before the meeting, Brittany shares in her private video that the couples take that she thought that she would be a lot farther along in this process with her husband and not just exclusive to Will, like with any husband that she was with in this process than where they are right now. When the experts come over, she shares that she feels like she can't gauge how Will is feeling or where they are at. Will is such a confusing individual. I don't blame Brittany for just being so confused by him that confusion causes a little bit of unrest, because what happens is Will gets a little bit defensive and says that every other day Brittany is asking him if it's going to be a yes on decision day. And he subsequently afterwards acknowledges that she must be feeling a lack of validation from him and security because he isn't reassuring her. And this just reminded me that people know what they're doing. Like, it's like, it reminded me of like, it just reminded me of when like you find out that someone said something intentionally to be rude and you gave them the benefit of the doubt. And then you're like, oh, you meant that shit. Like you meant that shit. You meant to make me feel exactly as I did. Or a friend hasn't texted you back and you thought they were busy but you've been feeling a little neglected, or you've been feeling like I hope they're okay, and then all of a sudden they reach out and they're like, I've been ignoring you. And it's like, oh, so like you've been meaning to make me feel this way. Because here's the thing. You can't have as big of a brain as Will claims to have and has shown that he has and not know that you're making her feel that way. You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to decide that it's not your problem to fix or reassure her, but you can't not notice it at this point. So, anyways, Will went into basically a debate mode, pointing out Brittany's flaws and telling her that she is the one who is cheating them both by not being herself and without owning that she's not making him feel comfortable, she's causing that. And what I would say to Will is when you don't make somebody feel comfortable, or when you don't make somebody feel with your actions like they have the space to share things with you, they won't. Like that's why when you have friendships, maybe there's certain friends you tell certain things to because you know that they have the space for that and you know that they'll know how to navigate that situation. Brittany isn't going to be able to feel safe enough to tell you how she's feeling in the moment when you haven't shown her that she has the space to share those feelings. You don't give her the sense that you're going to reassure her anyways. So to put it out there in the open for what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also thought it was very interesting in my perception. And I want to add this too for anybody that's new to me. I think it's really important to be intentional with my words and to talk about things with nuance because Will is a black man, so I want to keep that at the top of mind when I talk about him because I don't ever want to seem like I'm saying things that are unfair or suggesting things about his character that simply aren't true,
Yeah.
okay? But in my perception, Will was being very sarcastic and very curt during this session with the experts. And whether it's the edit, because we're missing more now, I thought it was interesting that they didn't acknowledge it. It was clear that she was walking on eggshells, and they didn't acknowledge that and instead delved into a conversation asking if they've discussed their futures past this experience
Yeah.
and what their living arrangements would be. And this is when Will says that he will live with Brittany, but he's definitely keeping his place. Brittany begins to cry. Will vulnerably did pull her closer, maybe demonstrating that he shows his love physically and not with validating words. What did you think of this?
Will and Brittany are so complicated for me to talk about. I feel like I just had a revelation right now talking to you because I'm loud about how I love them so much. I want them to work. But on the flip side, I've always said that, Will is operating, he's one track. He just thinks a certain way and isn't deviating from that. And I was kind of like, this is a man that you're dealt with, meet him halfway. But the question is with Brittany, if she was with someone else more than Will, right? Do you think this is still the Brittany that we get coming in? Because that's her baggage from her own words. That is just like, these men have always made me feel like I'm not good enough. But as you were speaking, I think you mentioned fact, like at the bottom line, he's not making her feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But is it a case of because he doesn't like her or because they just met? Growing pains. Because we have had couples in the past where that's how we started, but then they ended up well, watching from all through the season. So that's where I struggle with is it my delulu of wanting them to work so bad that I'm just like they can make it work? Or is it a case of like they just have to meet in the middle because she's just very raw with her emotions. She's just out there and she's just, terrified, but also he's not creating that safe space. He seems to acknowledge it, but he also can't help himself. So what do you do in that case? Is it something that can be worked on, or is this just it? And then, that's it. But Will tends to be negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why
Cynical.
he doesn't stop himself. Like, no, we're not living together. And I think, is this the part where he said he was going to live, he wants to keep his apartment? Was the part. But you see, when he said his reasoning, it made sense to me. He lives close
Did
to
you
the
believe
airport.
him though? That's the question. His reasoning made sense, but I didn't feel that when he said that. I think he meant what he said the first time. I think he meant, well, I will live with Brittany, but I'm definitely keeping my place. I don't think he meant it for them to share. That was my perception of his sincerity with that statement, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have to go to therapy. I need to unpack what this is because I completely understand the dating, and I don't want to make excuses, but I think it's just Will has been so matter of fact from jump. That's always who he's been. Like when she said you'll be okay if there are wildfires, and this man had a response to that. I, how do you explain Will? I don't know, and it's just to me where I'm at with them is like she just has to decide if she can live with this or not. But I don't know, why don't I think he has bad intentions? That's everything he's presenting seems negative. So why don't I just don't see
Well,
it.
that's why Brittany's confused because
Yeah.
he's not giving assurance, but there's moments of
Yeah.
like a glimmer of an effort, or
Yeah.
there's moments of softness. I think that where I'm going to say that Will is really, really reminding me of Akechi is he doesn't like Brittany. but he doesn't like her because she's pushing him. And Will doesn't like to be pushed. He wants to share things at his own pace. He wants to get there when he gets there. He wants to be vulnerable if he wants to be vulnerable. He wants to be sarcastic if he wants to be sarcastic. He wants to share if he wants to share. And Brittany kind of like trying to get to know him and what he wants is
Yeah.
bothering him because Will's personality isn't compatible with this experience. He's not someone to me who meets people and immediately tells them his life story. Will far from seems like an oversharer. It's even apparent that at his work life, like yes, he can talk to the person next to him to get work done, but what I held against him that I now think he's a clown when he's around his friends. Like he can be himself, like he can be joking with them. He can be lighthearted and animated and he can be the center of attention, but with everybody else, he's very pulled back and withdrawn. And I do partially think that that's him being so analytical. And I partially think it's because he is not happy in this situation. I don't think anything about this situation is something that's like comfortable for him. And I think that I don't know, like I think that with Will, even since the beginning conversation he had with Brittany's parents about religion, I just feel like he shuts down so easily. And like when he shuts down, it doesn't matter if he's talking to his elders, his in-laws, Brittany, the experts, like he shuts down. And I just think that you almost can't meet somebody in the middle like that because you're just accepting less. Like you're just it's just it feels like I appreciate the fact that everybody learns their partner, but like the subtle things that he does he doesn't give her affection until she cries. I've noticed that. Like it's not until she cries that he will pull her in because he doesn't really believe that like I don't think it registers to him how upset she is until she cries. That this is an upsetting conversation, that he's being withdrawn, that he's hurting her feelings. And I think once Brittany cries, he's like, "Oh, I was being an asshole." And but his like failure to see himself like in the moment, like I think that that's an issue.
This is all new to me. I feel like I've seen examples of him showing her affection. And again, I'm caveating with I don't know if it's my Delulu, but he's pulled her and, held her. And when he came back from work, he was like, I just want to sit next to you. And
I
he
liked
was
that.
holding her and they were having that. When they first moved in, I think they were in front of a mirror and then he just kissed her and
That's
was like,
true.
just like to see you. So there's something there. I think where for people who might disagree with me, it's like where I'm giving more grace to him is because I just think the way he processes stuff is completely different.
I
And
agree.
you can see the other cast members when they were at the lunch or something. I think Megan something about, oh, that's Will, and Chad was like, that's a very Will answer when he was, teasing. Like they know like Will is just different. I think going back to something I said some episodes ago, it's just their characteristics are incompatible. They're just two very different people. Like Will would do well maybe with someone who just didn't pay him any mind. And then maybe he would want that affection. And then Brittany just needs someone that gives all the words of affirmation. But I think you're also right though. Like he is smart. You do know the things. Like you could just start the sentence and stop. You don't need to say the rest of it. But I don't know. Is that going to take time or is it just never going to happen? I don't know. Because that's what the problem is right now is saying things like, well, I don't know how it's going to last. I want to be with you now, but I don't know. Because on paper, that is factual. He's just saying, like, hey,
Mhm.
things might change tomorrow, but do you need to say that? Because the same way I'm saying, maybe Brittany meet him halfway, he has to meet her halfway too. It's two people in a relationship. You know that this affects her. You know she's looking for reassurance. Why would you say things that are not reassuring? So,
Agreed. And we see effort from Will. Like, listen, do I think Will likes Brittany? Yes. Do I think that Will I think that he said it himself. He's not in love with her. I can appreciate that. He doesn't want to
Hmm.
say things prematurely before he's ready. But as far as he's not like, I just need him to be softer with her. He needs to try more. I know you might not be in touch with your emotions. I know you might be very analytical, but you need to give more because women need a little bit more compassion. And Brittany is not all women, but Brittany has shown that that's what she
She
needs.
needs. Hmm.
So, he needs to like offer her that like an olive branch, and we see him sometimes, which we'll get to in a second when he goes to her family. But what was I gonna say? Okay, I'm going to go through things a little bit more quickly just so that we can get through the rest of the episode. And also, we basically hit the meat of the things that happened in the first part. So, Derek and Meghan have a chat with the experts about Meghan dropping her walls, Derek finally reciprocating the I love you a few days ago. As we sat in this conversation, I literally have it written in my notes. Meghan's boobs look huge. I think she's pregnant already. Question mark, question mark. And spoiler, we find out in the next episode, right? Is it the next
Well,
episode?
in this
This
episode.
episode.
Hmm.
Sure as shit, I was right. Okay. Took one look at Meghan, saw the boobs, and thought she's definitely the one who's pregnant. And it's definitely right now. Rhonda and Pat, do you have any thoughts about that interaction?
No, just that they were so calm about it, and just the fact that they said they weren't even trying, and if you have unprotected sex every day, kinda is subconsciously trying, but that's besides the point.
I agree. I agree. Are you not trying?
When
No,
not
not
trying.
trying. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So Rhonda and Pat are sitting in her kitchen, and she is sharing another family moment where she talks about how she doesn't feel like she was ever chosen by her dad because he favored her sister Randy. And after her divorce, followed by toxic relationships, which made her the pursuer of somebody begging her to pick her, to love her, and accepting less than treatment. And truthfully, I don't know where Rhonda was going with this. You know what I mean? Like we just get more information about her. She also adds that if Pat thinks that she's being critical, that she was yelled and screamed at a lot worse by her last relationships. And on one hand, thanks Rhonda for giving us more context. On the other hand, you think that this is shedding perspective on why you are the way you are and you are trying to excuse it, and it's not. I i hope that there was a little bit of an aha moment for Pat subconsciously realizing that Rhonda has several layered issues with abandonment, and also honestly just men in general.
General. Hmm.
He might be Rhonda in the situations she was in her past relationships where she is
Hmm.
begging and accepting less than treatment and asking somebody to pick her who is criticizing her because she's way more critical than she puts a pulse on.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I didn't clock I didn't clock that she gave more history upon history. We know so much about Rhonda. I was actually giving her props for being self-introspective and not being like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. She was trying to figure out where it was and not being chosen. But it's like she's repeating the patterns that happened to her. And she has said it before with her ex, where she was like, I don't want to be what he was to me to you. But again, she can't help herself. So,
She learned their behavior almost. Like
yeah.
you have turned into them. Do you have anything else to say?
No, it's just I don't think Rhonda should have gotten married. I think she
God,
needs a partner, but not like, marriage, because that's going to take a lot. It's a muscle that she hasn't used in, what did she say, 25 years? And, you know, it requires a lot that I don't think she's ready to give now. And she seems like she has a full life. It's not like it's
she
something that
does.
she did like she wanted it to enhance her life, but I don't know that she has the tools right now to do that, because if you can't make it work with Pat, I not like Pat is like the greatest, but it's like
Right.
again, his temperament,
Pretty
he can
agreeable.
take it, yes.
Mhm.
So where do you go from here unless she does that work? And again, maybe it's time. I don't know.
Rhonda, Rhonda, Rhonda. I knew your kids weren't lying when they told us that.
They did.
Episode 1, I knew they weren't lying.
They did.
The episode starts to close out with Brittany taking Will to her aunt's house to meet her entire family, who was adorable and looked like an absolute great time to be around. They were singing karaoke, eating good food. All of the family members were around. Brittany's house looks fun to be around. I also love that her aunt was showing pictures of Brittany as a kid. Will was sitting there and engaging, looking at the photos, trading some funny comments, kind of poking about Brittany. One thing that was interesting, though, is we learned that Brittany's not bubbly.
Mm.
And that's hard to believe because of how she is with Will. And because I think Will, like her family said, has brought out quite this different side of her. In fact, it was like their wedding day all over again. They were with the bell and wanting to see a kiss. They all gathered around to watch them share a kiss in the kitchen. They all said that they've never seen her bring a guy around. They've never seen her like this. I thought it was, I thought it added a lot of perspective to Brittany. We also learned that she used to rip her toenails off and bite her nails, which I guess Will thought was kind of funny and asked if that was an anxiety thing. What did you think about their family time?
I thought it was great. I thought it was good. I thought everyone was happy. And for me, anytime they have a good episode where things are going good, I'm happy. I wasn't sure how Will was going to act because I desperately want to see him around his family
Yep,
and
me
people
too.
like, he grew up with. We've seen him with his friends, but that whole interaction was weird. It's almost like they knew what we were about to find out, but like they've known for years and they're just like, huh, wait till you meet this guy. But I want to see him in his environment with his mom. I mean, we've seen him with his mom, but it was emotional at that time. So it was nice to see that he was out there and that, he indulged when they were like, oh, we want to see you kiss. That was my favorite thing. They were like, they kissing, they kissing. And each single time he was like, sure, I'll do it, I'll do it. So that was nice to see because
Agreed.
I almost felt like maybe Brittany felt tense, like, oh, I don't want to make him feel uncomfortable. I don't want, but he was fine with it. And it's like, if Brittany's happy, I'm happy. So it was a great scene.
Listen, I hate review. I should have only watched episode 9 so that I don't have episode 10 and 11 in my pocket because this episode I had was so hopeful. I loved it. I like I said, I have a lot of questions about Will just because I also have never been in a relationship with someone like Will. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily understand how I don't understand him. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I see when he makes an effort, and I enjoyed seeing him make an effort in this episode with her family because I think that that's an important moment. I know she put a lot of stock into the house, which I get that, showing him her place, but I
Yeah.
think that this was a kind of example of Will can do the things.
Family.
He can
Yeah.
show, yeah, he can show up and be excited and you know, like I said, I don't really care if Will feels that happy or not. Put it on. Like, and he was
Yeah.
able to. Like, he was in a good mood and it was fun to be around and joking. And that's what you just need to do sometimes.
But can we rewind? I'm trying to think of Will in social settings. He seems to get along with the other couple. Like, I don't think I
Definitely.
have a memory of Will being around them and just visibly like, ugh, I don't want to be here. I think that's what you
No,
expect of
he's just
Will.
quieter. He's
He's
just
just, yeah.
reserved. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's just reserved and like when he saw her house, for example, like he just didn't really say much, and that was like a big moment for Brittany. So I think that him and another big moment actually showing up and being excited about it, like,
Yeah.
and a moment that was big for her and not just hanging out with the other couples, I think that that probably like meant a lot to her. You know what I mean? But I definitely agree. He's not like brooding in the corner, like
Mm-hmm.
scowling at people. He's definitely not. He is funny, like when he says things, like his
Mm-hmm.
personality is pretty consistent with
Yeah.
Brittany and with the group. We'll hear the other couples even say things. That was a Will comment, or like,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the episode ends with Derek and Brittany showing the positive pregnancy test, and I knew it because the milkers gave it away. Oh my God, Derek and Megan. Derek and Megan. Derek and Meghan, fake news. Derek and Meghan, positive pregnancy test. Derek's obviously like really excited about this because he wanted a baby by Christmas. And so I don't know if he's going to make it by Christmas, but they made it happen pretty fast. Here's what I say to you, Derek. Buckle up, baby, because Megan's mood swings and hormones, pregnancy hormones are about to go crazy. Good luck, Chuck. Good luck, Derek.
And you just know if Derek is like, no, I don't want to, she's like, wait, I'm carrying your baby for, is it 9 or 10 months? And you want to say no, you will do everything that I ask you to do.
Can I say though, I was shocked a little bit by the preview of Megan saying, just because we're having a baby doesn't mean that we have to be married. I was kind of like shocked by the preview of that because I think that Derek seems like it's like a lock for him. Like all he needed was for Megan to be pregnant and then all right, yeah, I'm gonna marry her. That's fine. I got what I wanted. I wanted to have a kid. She's my
Yeah.
wife now. And so I was just kind of shocked to hear her say that. Uh, yeah, I'll be interested to see how they navigate that situation because she's right? Like, do you have to
Yeah.
stay together? No, of course not.
Yeah.
But I feel like Derek's gonna want to, like
Yeah.
for sure.
I think that's exactly why she said it. That's on brand for Megan to say. I think she's saying it because, listen, just because we're having a baby doesn't mean don't stay with me out of pity. Don't stay because she's still, fight or flight is her default. And she's going to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got pregnant. If you know there's anything else you don't like about me, just say it. She's the kind of person that'll also be like, I don't need anything from you. I can raise this baby on my own. So
She's like
it's on brand.
emotionally reactive
Yeah.
and yes, absolutely. Well, that's the episode. I think that right now, right? Because we're ending the episode on a high note for Megan and Derek. They just found out they're pregnant. They seem excited about it. I think that they'll say yes for now on wedding day. Like episode 9 excluded by itself, episode 9. Yes, I think that they'll say yes on decision day. Will and Brittany. I have no idea. Like truly a giant question mark lingers above the head. For Belinda and Chad, I'm going to say that Belinda says no at this point and Jalen says no as well. That's my prediction
I
off
can
of
see that.
episode 9. What about
Episode
you?
9, yes. Episode 9, I agree with everything that
Okay.
you just said. Episode 9, oh, did we say Will and Brittany? Episode 9, I think they both say yes.
Okay, just
Based on
episode
episode 9.
9.
Yes,
You're
just
right.
episode
You're
9.
right.
They say yes. And then for Rhonda, I think that's the only one. Rhonda and Pat, I think Rhonda says no and Pat says yes. Episode 9.
God. Does Pat have kids?
Yes. Two
I
boys in Arizona.
Okay. I think Pat says no and Rhonda says yes based off of this episode because I'm hoping Pat's kids or other relatives tell him this is not normal. This is not normal. Like you've already been to her family reunion, you're potting all these pots for her, you know about her whole life story, you could write a biography about her. No. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking reversed for now, but I could see Pat being agreeable and just saying yes. I could
Yeah.
see that as
I
well.
don't. I see him as a person like he's the kind of person that doesn't want to break up with someone.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, let it just be so bad. If you break up with me, that's fine. I'll be the bad guy, but I will not be the one to break up with you. I still think there's something good there. Meanwhile, Rhonda is like, I want my freedom. I want to be.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Well, everybody, leave us your comments. Tell us what you thought about episode 9. I will be back to recap episode 10. As I started out this episode with, if you're not following Tayne, make sure that you go over to Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you play your podcast, and listen to her podcast, Altar Call, a Married at First Sight podcast, because she recaps every single episode with phenomenal guests who are sometimes prior cast members from recent seasons or just people like me that are fun to talk to. So if you haven't discovered her podcast, I'm going to put it in the show notes for you to check out. But she has all of the recaps. Make sure that you head over there. Anything that you would like to say and close out with?
Say thank you, Leah. Now I have a lot to think about because I came in here with like all my thoughts and now I'm going back to rethink stuff. I don't want to let go of Brittany and Will yet. So,
I don't
but
either. I don't either. Now I'm like, am I being cynical? Let me know in the comments, everybody. Like now I'm unsure.
No, you're not being cynical. When you put plain facts, he's not giving her what she needs. And either
Mhm,
way, I'm Team Brittany. Will
mhm,
be all right. But I'm Team Brittany, and that's what she wants, and he's not giving it to her, regardless of if she's emotional or
mhm.
not. It comes right back to if he gave her what she needed to feel safe, we'll have a different story. So now I'm going to go back and think about that and decide if I want to face facts or if I want to stay delusional. So thanks, Leah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. No, listen, we help center each other. I needed to collect myself a little bit on Scott, Derek's best friend that I had it out for. I needed to collect myself a little bit on Megan, so we both take each other's feedback and it gives us more to think over and stew over and everybody who's listening. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on.
you're welcome.
All right, everybody, have an amazing rest of your day. Like I said, I will be back to recap the rest of the batch of episodes before we get new episodes on Thursday. So stay tuned. Share this episode with anybody who watches Married at First Sight or just anybody who likes pop culture and reality TV, because I think you can still find something interesting from what we're talking about. Also, just to note, I just finished the TV series on Peacock, All Her Fault. It was incredible. I think it's such a representation of the endless list of tasks that women have to do and why they resent their partners sometimes. And that's just one of the themes of the show because it's generally about a little boy who gets kidnapped. So if you haven't seen it, watch that. I'm going to come back with a review. Have you watched it?
I am on episode 3, but it's so funny. I put that same comment on Threads where I said also, like, we women also internalize that because you see the women blaming themselves. Not once have the husbands been like, oh, I should have done this, but the women like, oh, I'm terrible. I need to do this. But society is a bitch, man.
Mhm. And every episode I'm thinking, look how the blame falls to the woman for
Hmm.
not picking up the child on time from daycare or not picking up the child on time from school or missing a recital, and it's never the man. So, I encourage everybody to watch that show. I'll be giving a more full recap. I'm glad that you've caught it. And everybody have an amazing rest of your week.